You wake up on a cold morning, start your car, and hear the engine settle into that slightly louder idle. The old advice immediately comes to mind. Let it warm up before you drive. Maybe you were told to wait 5 minutes, maybe 10. Some people even wait until the temperature gauge starts moving before putting the car in gear. But does your car actually need all that time? Or are you just burning fuel while sitting in the driveway? The answer is surprisingly simple. For most modern gasoline-powered cars, you don't need to let the engine idle for several minutes before driving. In fact, gentle driving is generally a better way to bring the engine up to operating temperature. But there's an important reason this advice became so common in the first place. So, before we decide whether the old warm-up ritual is dead, let's go back under the hood, right here, on History of Simple Things. For much of automotive history, engines relied on carburetors to mix gasoline and air. Carburetors were mechanical devices, and they weren't nearly as adaptable to changing temperatures as modern electronic fuel injection systems. When an engine was cold, gasoline didn't vaporize as easily. The carburetor needed to compensate by providing a richer fuel mixture. Many vehicles also had a choke that restricted airflow to help the engine start and keep running. That meant a cold engine could stumble, hesitate, or even stall if you drove away too quickly. Letting it idle for a while gave the engine time to stabilize. So when your parents or grandparents said warm up the car first, they weren't necessarily making it up. For older vehicles, there was a genuine mechanical reason for doing it. The problem is that this advice stuck around long after automotive technology changed. Modern cars use electronic fuel injection and engine control computers that constantly monitor conditions such as temperature and airflow. The system can automatically adjust the fuel mixture during a cold start, allowing the engine to run properly without sitting there for several minutes. When you turn the key or press the start button, something important happens almost immediately. The engine's oil pump begins circulating oil through the engine. Oil may have drained back toward the oil pan while the car was parked, but that doesn't mean the engine needs 5 or 10 minutes of idling before its components are protected. The oil begins moving through the lubrication system shortly after startup. At the same time, the engine computer recognizes that the engine is cold and adjusts how it runs. You might notice the idle speed is temporarily higher than normal. That's intentional. Modern engines are designed to manage this cold start period automatically, including warming the catalytic converter so the emissions control system can work effectively. So, if you've been sitting in the driveway waiting for the temperature gauge to reach its normal position, you're generally waiting much longer than necessary. And this doesn't mean you should start the engine and immediately floor the accelerator. The better approach is to start the engine, give it a brief moment to settle, buckle your seatbelt, adjust your mirrors, and then drive normally but gently. Several manufacturers and automotive organizations recommend avoiding extended idling and allowing the engine to warm up through normal driving instead. Why does driving work better? Because the engine is actually doing work while you're moving. That load generates heat, allowing the engine and its fluids to reach normal operating conditions more efficiently than simply sitting at idle. Think of it like exercising. If you want to warm your body up, standing still near a heater works differently from moving around. The same basic idea applies here. A lightly loaded engine generally warms more effectively while driving than while sitting motionless. And during those first few minutes, there's no reason to drive aggressively. Avoid unnecessary hard acceleration, high engine speeds, and heavy loads until everything has reached normal operating temperature. Here's where things get a little more complicated. If you're dealing with frost, ice, or snow covering the windshield, you absolutely need to clear it before driving. But that's a visibility and safety issue, not a requirement to heat the engine for 10 minutes. In cold weather, you may allow the car to idle briefly while you clear the windows and make sure everything is safe. Some vehicle manuals also recommend a slightly longer warm-up under particularly cold conditions. The exact advice can vary by vehicle, climate, engine, and manufacturer, so your owner's manual should take priority. What's generally unnecessary is leaving a modern car running in the driveway simply because you believe the engine must reach its normal temperature before the wheels can move. And if the car is parked inside a garage, never run the engine in an enclosed space. Exhaust contains carbon monoxide, an odorless and potentially deadly gas. Does warming up waste fuel? Yes, and this is one of the biggest reasons extended idling isn't recommended. A stationary car that's running is still burning fuel even though it's traveling nowhere. The longer you sit there, the more fuel you're consuming without getting any distance out of it. The EPA specifically advises against unnecessary idling because it wastes fuel, produces emissions, and can contribute to engine wear. Modern vehicles generally don't require an extended winter warm-up. There's another practical benefit to driving gently instead. The engine reaches its normal operating temperature sooner. That means you aren't spending several minutes burning fuel just to heat a stationary vehicle. So, does your car need to warm up before you drive? Not in the way older generations were often taught. For most modern gasoline cars, you don't need to sit there for 5, 10, or 15 minutes waiting for the temperature gauge to rise. Start the engine, give it a brief moment, make sure the windows and mirrors are clear, and then drive gently. The engine will warm up as you go, and that's generally more efficient than letting it sit and idle. The old warm-up ritual wasn't completely wrong. It belonged to a different generation of automotive technology, when carburetors and cold start problems made warming up genuinely useful. Today's engines have computers, sensors, fuel injection, improved lubricants, and emission systems that have fundamentally changed how cold starts work. So the next time you start your car on a chilly morning, you probably don't need to stand beside it waiting for the temperature needle to move. Just start it, buckle up, drive smoothly, and let the car do what modern cars were designed to do: warm up while you're on your way. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.